And this panel is going to be really helpful to those of you who are entering the pre-professional world. And I want to encourage you to ask questions in the chat. If you're watching on Facebook, please share questions there. I'm going to be pulling those questions and sharing them with the youth committee so that they can answer them as they have time. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the chair of the ICA's new youth committee, Vanessa Davis, and the ICA Youth Committee representatives here.
All right, thank you everyone so much for coming. We are so excited to do this panel with all of you. And I just want to echo what Jessica said. Any questions you have, just feel free to pop them into the chat and we will do our very best to get to them. So I thought a good way for all of us to start our discussion today is to start with a discussion of the digital platforms that we're using. So what is everyone using in terms of their digital platforms? What do you think the students are using?
Definitely TikTok. Yeah.
So for people who may not know what that is, just in case we have anyone who's watching, do you want to tell us a little bit about TikTok, Meredith?
Oh, I am on TikTok. I have a Clarinet account on TikTok, but it's where you can create videos, and what I really like about it is that you can like create these short videos that have any type of music that you really want. Like they have an exhaustive list of like just tons of different types of music you can have playing in the background, and everything from educational content to just plain weird silly stuff. And of course there are ads on there as well, but there are already like TikTok influencers the way that there are on other social media accounts. And things go viral even faster on TikTok than I think they do anywhere else. I'm sure that does not cover everything about TikTok, but that's the gist, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. Has anyone else here been using TikTok? We have from the chat, Jessica echoing TikTok, yes, and memes as well, which we will get to later on. Does anyone else here, does anyone here any experience using TikTok with their students or for their studios or anything?
Yeah, one of the things that we've done, I'm a middle school band teacher. One of the things we've done for a project, they actually had to find a TikTok song and perform it, and especially for students where it's not as engaging. Like they don't want to play Hot Cross Buns through Essential Elements, number 17, I think, right? So they were able to record, they learned how to like record their playing, they got to listen back to it. So having something that they're passionate about like TikTok, even those dances, some of those practice those dances for hours, right? And if they can practice clarinet for how long they practice those dances, that's like a step in the right direction.
Actually, that made me think about how on TikTok you can do something called duetting, where you basically record something that is directly adjacent to a TikTok video that someone else has made. And so learning the dances and stuff, or like that's something where that could possibly be, I might be getting off topic a little bit now, but that could be something where on TikTok, you could have your students duet with, like, I know sea shanties. I don't know if they're still really big, but they were at some point recently. And so that could be something that students do, like duet with one of the sea shanties.
Absolutely, 100%. That could be a really great way to do it. What other platforms are you all familiar with students using currently? Anything else? I mean, anything that comes to mind, just because whoever's listening, they may not know it. So it might be nice for us to have kind of a little exhaustive discussion about it.
I know Instagram's really popular, especially the like the 100 days of practicing is like trending right now. And all my college students are like loving that. They're like, I get to practice and I get to share it and people care about that I practice. I'm like, good, it gets you hooked on practicing.
For sure.
I'm not so sure. So there's Facebook, although I don't see as many young people using Facebook. It was something maybe young people used back in the early 2000s when it came out, when I was in college. But I do think that Instagram and TikTok are probably the big ones that younger students are using. I don't know if, are there others?
I see you currently in the chat. Jessica has mentioned Discord, which is something that I recently tried to become familiar with. And I see actually has a brand new Discord server where you can have a bunch of different types of conversations. They're all different little, I was seeing on there's a little spot for talking about articulation and talking about this. And I think one of the cool features of Discord, I think it's used a lot with online gaming. I could be wrong because it's not my area of expertise, but I think it's used a lot with online gaming. And I think there's also a video, like you can leave a video message as well. So I think that could potentially be something that we could use. So we know all about sort of the basics, like you were saying, Facebook is maybe not as current, but definitely Instagram, TikTok, and it looks like Discord is one of the upcoming platforms. So already that's really great information, I think, for all of us to start with. So how are we using these platforms to reach students? We've talked a little bit about school assignments. We've talked about other things. Is anyone starting groups for their studio or anything like that? I know I've started a Facebook group, which is a little bit old school, to try to get students interested in, seeing what's going on, not just in our studio, but in other studios as well, and an Instagram page and things. So what are you all doing with regard to that? And how do you feel like that's feeding your studios in your classroom?
I've created like the studio Facebook page, and then the studio Instagram is a lot more popular just because it has the pictures, and they tend to like that better because it's a little bit more interactive with pictures and videos and that kind of thing.
Shannon, do you have something?
Yeah, it was kind of on the same lines of the studio Instagram, just because you can put little video snippets in the stories. So recitals and things like that, you can kind of put teasers for the studio and, sharing all of that. Plus the pictures. Everybody loves pictures.
Oh, absolutely. Is anyone putting anything, like teasers for recitals and things, but any like short educational things? And do we think that any of these resources that we've currently talked about would be something that we could put those sort of short teasers maybe for educational resources out there as well? Or do we think maybe YouTube? What do we think about that? We didn't really talk a whole lot about YouTube, although that's pretty common at this point, and those typically for longer form videos. But where in your teaching experience are students finding educational clarinet resources, and what are the benefits and drawbacks of those different resources? Because I think that's where we're sort of headed with this, is how can we get reliable information to the students via these different platforms? So I guess the first place to start is for you, in you all's experience, where are your students getting that information, and is it reputable? Is it not reputable? How do we teach if it's reputable? All of that sort of stuff.
Some of my younger students really like to watch YouTube videos. I know that was like a trending thing. I always think YouTube's kind of not like old fashioned, but it came out so long ago that kind of surprised me that my middle school students are super into YouTube videos. But sometimes they'll show me something and I'm like, this person obviously doesn't know how to play clarinet. And they just like happen to stumble on it. And I'm like, it's good, but not quite accurate.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think a lot of, sorry, Meredith, we about to speak at the same time. I think there's a lot of really good, popular clarinetists performing clarinetist amateurs on YouTube, and you can create your own, what do you call that? Sorry, I had a 2-hour rehearsal right before this. Playlist that your students can access, and that way they can access those particular videos or those particular performers or educators or whatever through those playlists. I've done that before.
I was going to say that when it comes to content on YouTube, and you're totally right, like students seem to be really interested in searching how to do things on YouTube. I find a lot of the time they don't know the right questions to ask when they're looking for something. So I was looking at like Google data with what are the most popular like search terms when it comes to clarinet in YouTube. And one of the most searched questions is, how do you play clarinet, or how to play clarinet, which that's not really the question as educators that we know that you should start with, right? And so I think another layer to this is not only how do we direct them to the right content, but how do we teach them to ask the right questions? As far as like ICA and helping students and educators, like maybe band directors who don't play clarinet, who have to teach clarinet, helping them get to correct content on social media or on YouTube. Is it a good idea to have almost like an ICA seal of approval or something where whether it's another committee or someone within the organization that vets clarinet accounts, and that's a way that either it's listed as a resource on the ICA website, or the person who has the YouTube channel can have like a sticker on their YouTube channel that says like, this is ICA approved. So if a band director sends their students to your website, that then they know that it's legit, I guess.
Yeah, and we have some comments from the chat saying that, ICA is really needs to be creating this content. And I think that's the direction that several of the committees and the organization is probably going to be going in the future to help out with that for sure. So what are some successful strategies that you all have employed when attempting to connect students to educational resources? Where do you start? How have you all been doing this? Do you submit a list of links? Do you recommend one particular channel on YouTube or one particular Instagram account or something like that? Are there particular Instagram accounts? Are there particular blogs? For example, we know about it's really well-known, clarinet blogs and things like that. Are there any particular resources in that sort of arena that maybe aren't necessarily, maybe they're all on the same platform, they're not different platforms, but that you find to be really reputable resources that you would want people to know about? Other than the ICA, of course, and the Clarinet magazine and Master Index, which we all know about and everyone who's a member has access to online. But other than that, which we know is fabulous, what else is there out there that we should be recommending to our students that we know about, and students of all levels?
I mean, particularly for beginners, a book I use is actually for all woodwinds, but it's like a very simple step-by-step guide. It's just called Woodwind Basics. But one of the great things about it, it's literally like a clarinet for dummies step-by-step guide, especially for teaching beginners. So quite literally, it would just be step number 1, step number 2. And especially for like teaching 6th, 8th graders, 9th graders, it's like an excellent resource to, okay, let me go back in time, remember how to do this step-by-step. Like, how do I take the clarinet out of the case, kind of step-by-step.
For sure. So what strategies have people really employed to connect people to these resources? And I also see a question in the chat. Should the committee and ICA create content or curate content? To be determined later on. May or may not be in the works.
So I was to answer part of your question as far as like if there are specific, so you're asking for like specific accounts that we enjoy as clarinetists that can be used as educational. Is that, am I understanding?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, just anything really to sort of that we would want either educators who are dealing a lot with pre-professional clarinetists or pre-professional clarinetists to know about. So it could be an Instagram account. It could be any kind of strategy that you all use to get students to the educational resources, whether it be through a specific account or through a specific YouTube channel or whatever. We have some people doing saying Etude of the Week, and I think practice groups are really great. Those are great things. But what all are you thinking?
On like some of the social media accounts, using hashtags for like studio groups have worked really well, especially like the practicing, 100 days practicing is like the main hashtag now. And then I try to like give my students a list. So if it's either in the back of the syllabus, I give them like a whole list of resources, or if it's my younger students, I will just email them after like the first couple of lessons and give them a few resources or like links to things that I think would help them. Especially like one of my favorites right now is the YouTube channel Color is Piano. So it's a piano player who has a bunch of accompaniments on like standard clarinet literature, and he has it at different tempos. So if my students are learning a piece and they don't want to pay for an accompanist, especially at the very beginning when they're going under tempo, it's a great resource for them to get that practice and start building their ear on that piece without having to pay for a bunch of rehearsals.
Absolutely, especially in light of the change of the platform. Oh, it is now, the name of it is now slipping my mind, that we, the platform where we used to have the accompaniments we could go to, and now they've changed it. Do we all remember, anyone get the name of that?
Smart Music?
Smart Music, yep. Thanks, Jessica and Meredith. Yes, absolutely, Smart Music. But I've been using Color is the Piano a lot as well. Does anyone else have any others that we like? I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Jenny Clarinet blog. Of course, we all know about that. We're all very familiar with that, and there's a lot of good reputable information there to kind of direct students to. And I see Paula Corley and Earspasm have great YouTube accounts, and Earspasm also has, for those of you who may not know, that's Michael Lowenstern's page. He also has resources for purchase, but they are $0. So there are some really great bass clarinet fingering charts. There are some other resources that I picked up there. I think he has all of the accompaniments for the concert and contest collection, that Rubank collection, all just to purchase for free. So does anyone else have anything with regard to that we want to get out there for people to know? Sure.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. I have a website that I developed with some people that is the state list. It's got Texas and Florida right now, but it's all of the solos on that list. It includes, can search them for pedagogical information. So level information, and then things like, there's a lot of, extended techniques in this. So a resource that students could look up their solos and kind of get some ideas. I don't get paid for it. It's just for fun. So I'm not selling it for that, but it's clarinetlist.com. And there's, hundreds and hundreds of solos on there for students to kind of look at. Thanks, Jessica, for putting that in the chat.
That's amazing.
There's, I was also going to mention Earspasm, and there's like the fact that there's bass clarinet in there as well, which I think sometimes is overlooked. A YouTube channel that I really like is Callie's Clarinet channel. Callie Laughlin is a Chicago-based clarinetist and clarinet teacher, and she has phenomenal content, and she's a great player, and she started like a Saturday YouTube video where it's clarinet, Callie Clarinets and Coffee, or Cat's Clarinets and Coffee, or something like that. And it's great for the pre-professional clarinetist, actually. And then I have a website, a YouTube channel, Clarinet HQ, Instagram and TikTok, like all that. It's more for beginner intermediate clarinet students, but similar to what Smart Music was doing, the idea was to create videos that students can play along with, because right now we're very limited, and our students are very limited with being able to play with other clarinet players or with a band. So the idea is to get them playing music with other people, but it's like a play along video. So that's something else that we can create, right?
Absolutely, for sure.
Another classic one I love is Imslp, so it's free public domain music, which is always really nice. So if your students like eventually are like, I just don't have any more funds, you're like, Imslp, that will help you out so much. And then another kind of random one is Forvo, which is like pronunciation of foreign words. And actually you can pick the country. So if it's a word like an Italian word or like a Germanic word, you can find someone from that country speaking that word to get as close as possible to the right pronunciation, which is really helpful for me because I always say the words wrong.
That's so neat. I've never heard of that one. Forvo, cool. All right. So does anyone have, we've covered a little bit of performance and pedagogy. Do we have any favorite resources for care and maintenance? Because we know with regard to, we band directors and maybe people who have a lot to do with young and pre-professional clarinetists, both different levels. It's really important to have those resources available. Do you all have any favorite care and maintenance websites, blogs, books, anything like that that you would want people to know about that you think would be helpful?
That's actually something that I would like to know more about. I know on Instagram, I know I follow some students that are learning how to take care of instruments, the maintenance behind it. But I don't know a specific account that is, or a YouTube channel that is specific to care and maintenance. But I do know that earlier today, there was in ICA Plays On, right? There was a seminar with someone who did like up close with clarinet repair. I didn't get to go to it, but I'm definitely going to be watching the video.
Yeah, the U.S. Army Band actually has a YouTube video of repairing every single musical instrument for band. And there's like 10 minutes for each section. So it's kind of like the most commonly, mainly for middle high school students that, shove their clarinet together kind of fixes. So it's like the really common ones you find, especially in younger students.
Absolutely. And we see in the chat, Lisa Canning's website has some great blogs. Emily Ward is telling us that the Clarinet and Clarinet Playing by David Pino does cover a lot of clarinet topics, which it does. I think Jessica is telling us that session that you were talking about, Meredith, was from Miles de Castro. And then Jonathan Copeland and Melanie Wong. Melanie Wong was actually the person I was thinking about when we were talking about this. I follow her on Instagram, and she does a lot of different types of posting, but I do believe she also talks a lot about her repairs on there. I know that there is a music store that's fairly local for me called TB Wins that I do believe also has an Instagram account that I think was doing some posting, and then when the store moved to a larger location, it was kind of like on hiatus for a little bit, but that would be something I would check out as well. That would be helpful in addition to those military bands that Jonathan was talking about. And we have some resources from Brett Pimentel as well, who I just think has a really wonderful blog that covers a variety of different topics as well. And just so everyone knows, Jessica is putting all these different accounts into the chat for us for later. So this is being recorded and will be put up on YouTube so that we can sort of go back to it and see it. I think that will be really great. Anyone have any digital resources for performance anxiety that they know about? I know there have been a lot of fairly new within the last year, no big surprise there, accounts that I found on Instagram through my studio page. The Functional Musician is one that I've really enjoyed, but does anyone found any others with regard to maybe to performance anxiety issues and digital resources? Or maybe any resource that maybe we could connect to something.
I mean, depending on the level of the student, one of the best things is for them to actually record and record again and record again until they get it like perfect. Because a lot of the nervousness is not being prepared and not being like fully prepared. So kind of the process of, posting on YouTube or the process of posting on TikTok makes them practice so much by the end of it when they actually post it. It's like, why was I afraid in the first place?
For sure, absolutely. Someone mentioned it in the chat, but I was gonna bring up Bulletproof Musician. has also been really helpful as well. More broadly speaking, I don't have a background in this, but I know that there is information out there on the Alexander technique, which I know through its teachings addresses performance anxiety. Yeah.
I would totally say that playing for other people as much as possible, whether it's in live performances, anytime you can get experience, playing and learning to practice having that kind of anxiety and getting through it is going to be a bonus for anybody.
For sure. I mean, creating a digital resource that is you, I mean, I think is a really great way to go about this as well. Something I found in my sort of personal journey in performance anxiety and issues of that nature has been James Clear and his book, Atomic Habits. It's not necessarily just performance anxiety with regard to music or even clarinet, but it hits on a lot of issues of setting up a habit sort of based lifestyle that helps you, as Jonathan and Karen were saying, making sure that you're doing the things that are making you, sort of nervous. Because again, I don't have a professional background in that area either. But I think as teachers and as people trying to, show students the way in terms of digitally what's available to them, because this comes into the next question we're about to address, which is issues of inclusivity and accessibility when it comes to these resources. We want to see really what is available digitally. So using the digital platforms like Jonathan and Karen and many of us have been saying, in order to put yourself out there to help take care of some of these issues, can also be very helpful if you have that access. But if we go on, so what challenges do we all, and this sort of gets us to the big point here, is we have all these resources. We know many of them are available online. They're available digitally, and many of them available, for free of charge. You can get the Bulletproof Musician newsletter in your email once a week. All you have to do is sign up for it. But what challenges do you all foresee with regard to accessibility and inclusivity with regard to the current available resources, and how can we as a group address that? And we've already talked about potentially curating different lists of things, but I guess we should deal with the first part of the question, which is what challenges do we see with regard to accessibility and inclusivity with regard to what's already available in terms of these resources?
Kind of like we talked about earlier, is sometimes the students aren't always aware of like what's an appropriate resource or what's really like a good resource for them. So helping them realize like what to listen for and what to look for and the right questions to Google search to find the right thing.
For sure. Karen, did you have something?
I teach younger kids. I've taught mostly middle school and younger kids and some high school students. And a lot of the times with the younger kids, when I say inclusivity, a lot of kids have very different access to any kind of, Facebook is not really appropriate for younger kids. And of course, these readings are really difficult for the younger kids. And, so what kind of resources are out there for those younger kids? And I know I've had to, create things on the go quite often and just practice with the kids and teach them how. And where I taught, my school is a Title I school. And we've had to work on programs to get that inclusivity going, which is, I think, really important in our time.
For sure, and bridging that gap between stuff that's really for beginners and stuff that's more for much older students, which I think is something you were sort of touching on. Meredith, did you have something?
Yeah, so I know that the ICA has a great price for the student membership, where $10 through December 2021. And I was thinking as far as like, what can ICA do in regards to inclusivity and getting the information out for everyone? Because if you are in the middle of Utah teaching, you're the one music teacher in the district and you're teaching all of the classes and clarinet's not your main instrument, right? I'm wondering if, since we have a student price for ICA, is there a way for band directors who don't necessarily play clarinet, who have to teach it, to access ICA resources, whether it's for free or whether it's through a membership program that that can assist in their teaching. And then as far as inclusivity goes, I think it's just like we have a diversity committee. I think it's just as important that we are showcasing people of every background within these educational videos. If when ICA is creating educational content, I think where I get hung up is how do we reach the stressed out band director who has to teach clarinet and doesn't have time to like eat dinner, right? What's the process there? How do we get the word out? Ad campaigns on social media, hunting them down on Facebook or in like an email list, you know, that's kind of where where my skills end. I'm not really sure how we get there.
I think one of my
And
suggestions
Karen,
on that, having been in public schools for 30 years, is that unless somebody personally reaches out to me, I kind of ignore them. And that's not to be mean or anything, but there's only so much time in a day to do things. And I think the more we as clarinetists can reach out to schools and offer to do a clinic, that's where we start getting kids engaged and interested. And that's something I think, you know, if we can encourage people to do that, would be a really strong thing that we could do.
absolutely. I was going to ask you and Jonathan to chime in with that. Do you think there's any way, so clinics for sure, do you think there's any way that we can bridge the gap between a clinic and just no kind of interaction with the schools? Like, is there some way that we can get a digital resource? Do you think that band directors, either the middle school or high school level, would be interested in and looking at you know, some kind of resource? In the chat here, I have Emily Ward saying you could even create a blog specifically for band directors. And Jessica's saying that we have a pre-college institutional membership, which I had no idea we even had, which is incredible. And Diane Varger is telling us we have an ICA YouTube channel. So those are all different ways. But do you think that Karen and Jonathan, I mean, anyone of course can chime in, but I asked Jonathan and Karen because I know they most recently have been in the public schools teaching, if they think something like that would be useful, helpful, / how do we do that? How would we, you know, how do we start that? What are the areas we need the most help in?
I think one of the things is that we need to simplify things. I think for the younger students especially, and for their teachers, because when it gets really involved, a lot of people just are going to start tuning out and not really getting involved with it because it's a time issue if you're teaching band. But I also think if we can put it out in places like Instrumentalists and, you know, do some sort of advertising where most band directors will see it, or in the state, you know, music educators guides. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think the super important thing is just kind of like the bare basics that every band director should know. Like quite literally, a lot of people forget, how do I open up a case? I always give that example because the other day, a clarinet person, they opened up their case upside down and everything fell out. And especially in the school, like, you know, they say that you should spend the first 2 weeks on just classroom management or the routine of the class. And it should be the same thing for, you know, clarinet. How do you put it together? Spend the first like 2 lessons, if you're teaching private lessons, on how to put it together, how to put a read on. And like the very bare basics so that you start off with a really sound foundation.
For sure, absolutely. So I think we were talking earlier about how we feel like there are a lot of beginner resources. And then in the chat, Jessica was saying that there are a lot of, you know, resources geared toward the pre-professional collegiate member. But for me, I know personally as a high school teacher, someone who primarily teaches that area, younger college students, and then some older middle school students, I feel like I'm in kind of like a no person zone when it comes to materials that I end up just designing my own. And I always wonder, like, am I reinventing the wheel? What, you know, do you all know about, are there any resources that you know of out there that sort of hit on that middle zone? And then maybe that's the area we need to be looking at in terms of where we all can begin to add to that. Does anyone have any sort of bridging the gap sort of things, resources, books, but primarily maybe digital things we can include? And my other sort of part of the question is, you know, how do we reach not just everybody to make sure that everyone is included, but I mean, how do we even maybe reach the student that maybe doesn't have internet at home? Like, what do we do there? How do we handle that?
I think right now a lot of people have internet at home because cities are providing them because of COVID, but that will be short term, of course. And I think if we can, I had an idea. I think like I've seen some books that are really great for young kids, but I have to combine them with things. And I think it's maybe some ideas on how you can combine the method book with some other materials. So
I do think if a student lives in a home without internet access or without reliable internet access, I think I think we first have to reach their teacher or their band director. And then not only offer, so we have digital resources, but then offer those resources also as something that they can possibly download. So if there is, like I'm working on a free workbook right now where you can download the PDF, but there are also hyperlinks where you can watch a YouTube video that goes along with the lesson. And you can, if there's something that we can do where we can have like a free download, so maybe they can download it at school and print it off in their school library because it's educational material. So it should be free. Or maybe like 10 cents. And then they can actually have something they can take home where they don't need the internet to access, or they're using maybe their cell phone data for a 5-minute YouTube video, which shouldn't use too much, right? I'm thinking along those lines.
Absolutely. Those are great ideas.
I think a lot of times you have to use care in the videos that you do choose though. I had some young beginners one year find some videos and it was a person who actually showed them the fingerings. And it was really cool because it got them playing, but it definitely wasn't the most educational thing in the world. So, but it was cool in that manner. So just making sure, they're doing things that are smart and fun for them.
For sure. From the chat, we have Katina Sweety's YouTube video is also really great for younger players. I've had really good experience with that as well.
I think there's content out there, but not a lot, like you said, for that high school age group. And it might be one of those things where it just needs to be created and then put into some kind of list or something, like if ICA even has a list that they can have on their website of recommended resources for middle schoolers, high schoolers, collegiate level. I think that's just, it needs to be somewhere where everybody can find it. And I mean, that takes work to get it all together and to make the videos, but we're all getting a lot better at using our computers, especially people in my, 30 to 40-year-old age group where we've never done this before. And I think it's just a sign of the times. It's something that we've needed to do, and now we've been forced to. So I think all of us panelists and all of the professional people out there and college students can create this content. It just needs to be done.
100%, absolutely.
One of the things in my years of teaching, I always thought it'd be fun to, put together different aspects of different books, which would take a lot of time, obviously, but to put together the things that would be best teaching our students, because I always think combinations work, but how can we do that in a really good way for young kids?
For sure, and to have it available. I mean, that's part of the thing. And we have from the chat, that's a good task for the youth committee and the pedagogy committee to collaborate on in the future, resource lists at various levels. 100%. I mean, that's part of what we do as the youth committee, right? Is we're trying to figure out how to get that pre-professional membership engaged. So not just connected to our organization, right, and being members, but how do we get them engaged and get them the information that we need here? I think that's really, really important.
Many years ago, and I was thinking of this because the Flutist has a high school edition for students. And I always wondered why the clarinets didn't do that. And I know that the flute thing is huge, but why couldn't we do a newsletter with helpful hints for the clarinet, or some good ideas, or some good links? And that wouldn't be super expensive to send out.
Oh, absolutely. I know I personally do that for my studio once a month, but it's not something that I send, away to everybody. But I think individually doing everything that we can is important, but making sure that everyone is, and now we have all this information available, and that we're really disseminating it in any way that we can. Whether it's our personal Facebook pages, whether it's our professional Facebook pages, whether it's our studio pages and our Instagram accounts and TikTok, and even just, I think, engaging on Discord. And that's going to be really big and important, I think, for our membership. And we are, as always, incredibly grateful to Jessica for setting that up for us. But I think that would be a really great way also to kind of start to help direct students to those resources, because as we continue to head further into the 21st century, students have access to an endless amount of content. It's just a matter of sifting through it and us getting better at guiding them to those materials, I think. Jessica is telling us we also have an ICA forum. It's brand new. Yes, the ICA forum can be used for this, Diane says. Absolutely, 100%. I think that would be a great use of this for us. Meredith, did you have something?
I was gonna bring up that, so we talked about getting this content organized and on the ICA website, and possibly creating content. And something that was pointed out to me recently by a teacher was that it seems like when, so like on TikTok, on YouTube, when students, and this is at every level of playing, when students start following someone who is a clarinet player or a saxophonist or whatever, they really get into it, and it becomes more about the personality, more about that person, than it does about the information that they're sharing, right? And so I think just as important as the content is, it's how is it provided? Do we, that's just something that I was thinking about, that like it is no longer are we allowed to just sit and wax poetic about the clarinet, right? As much as I think some of us would love to do that, myself included. But now there's like another layer to it where now we're almost like personalities that you have to be online. And so I think that delivery of the content is just as important in order to keep, especially clarinetists who love playing clarinet, but may not necessarily become a music major, but we want to keep them involved in ICA as young players so that they can continue contributing, right, in that way. I think that's something to keep in mind.
Absolutely, 100%. I guess moving forward, what other sorts of topics do we think, do we want to talk about digital resources with regard to that we think our young clarinetists would need? We've talked about performance. We've talked a little bit about sort of basic pedagogy, things they would need, care and maintenance, performance anxiety. What other topics do we think they would be interested in that you think students of the pre-professional age, middle school through the end of college really would be interested in? Where might we find those resources? Sorry, John.
Yeah, I think a good resource, especially for like teachers and people who are like, what's a good way to like track where they are, is the ABRSM system that like a lot of people in Europe use. Because for them, it's like, you got to play this piece to be a level 3, or you got to select these pieces from this piece of repertoire. A lot of them are free. And a lot of these resources are like out there, especially the ABRSM system, where it's like, in order to like level up per se, almost like a video game, like from level 1 to 2, you have to do like this and level up. So a lot of the resources are out there. It's just kind of like what we said before. It's like where to find them.
Sure. So like different lists of repertoire might be a good resource for us to talk about. So the ABRSM list. I know that Shannon was talking about the Florida list. I am well acquainted with the Texas prescribed music list from the University Interscholastic League that has all different levels of all different pieces, and different ways that you can approach different pieces and different specific movements to have them be leveled in a certain way. Absolutely. So lists of repertoire. What else? What other digital resources in other areas do you think students really should know about as we start to approach sort of the end of our time?
That got me through high school, and this is not quite digital, but it's the art of clarinet playing. And I remember going through that solo list and trying to learn the solos on that list that they recommended and making sure I had them because they were mostly basic solos. And it was a really great guide for a kid who didn't know anything, you know, that didn't have that background. But digitally, there's lots of great things you can do for rhythm. Most kids I know have to work on rhythm and things you can work on tuning. And I think a lot of kids have things in their phones that they would use if we made them, you know, or if we encouraged them strongly. So.
Absolutely. That brings us to the great question of apps. Some of our favorite, I mean, apps really are a digital resource. What are some of our favorite apps we like to use with our students, and how do you use them?
We just talked about this. There's a lot of things, like if it's about note reading and rhythms, Ninjenius is fantastic for young kids. If you've never heard of it, it's worth checking out because it does fingerings, it does note names, and it does rhythms. And the kids love it. They think it's cool. I even use it with high school kids that are struggling. You know, there's 3D fingering charts. There's, you know, all of our method books now have visuals and videos to go with them usually. And those are great resources. And then Dancer has a lot of great things on it. So we have a pretty good list that we made up last time of things.
There's the one tuner app that has a smiley face. So when you get in tune, it smiles at you. And I know that one, teaching like intonation to my beginners, they love that. That gets them hooked like that.
I just put that one in the chat, the tonal energy TE tuner.
We also have from the chat, Jessica made some Clarinet fingering saver. She made a fingering saver app for Android. So if anyone is interested in that, that would be great.
That's pretty cool.
I was going to point out that most, maybe this is too basic of an app, but any metronome app, like students, what's nice is that living in the 21st century is that there's no excuse. Students, like almost all students, unless you're teaching like a really young kid, have a phone. And so then, and there are always metronome apps out there that are free. I have my phone here. I think the one that I really like is Soundbrenner. But the thing about metronome apps that I've run into with students is that they need to like time to like play around on it so that they know how to use it to help them, right? So figuring out how you can subdivide or how you get it to subdivide in 6/8 time, right? That's one of the things that I've always found with metronome apps is that because they're all different, like it's great, there are a lot of them, but because they're all different, there's usually like a learning curve with figuring out how to get it to actually help you out.
Definitely. Shannon, you typed something into the chat. Do you want to talk a little bit about the amazing slowdowner and AnyTune Pro?
That wasn't me. Different Shannon.
Oh, I see. But those are great apps. Thank you, Shannon Thompson. Thank you very much. AnyTune Pro for changing tempo and keys of recordings, and iReal Pro for jazz and other accompaniments. Absolutely. Talking about metronomes, I have something called Super Metronome on my phone, and I do use it occasionally. But I mostly have used it with my students in the past, back when I was seeing students in person. And what I liked about it is you can add like a super heavy rock groove to what you're doing. I mean, and it's not quite like Dr. Beat was, where he was a little bit retro and square, you know. I mean, it really sounds like a beat that you would get from like a beat machine, and it's kind of makes me feel a little too hip sometimes, you know. It makes scales and you know, arpeggios and things so much more exciting. So I mean, even something like that, it's not necessarily something that's going to give them a whole lot of content, but it is something that's, I think, going to get them thinking more about what they're doing and how they're doing it, and also different styles of music, which is important to me as well. Meredith, did you have something?
I was going to ask can you tell me the name of that again? I missed it.
Sorry, yeah, it's called Super Metronome.
Super Metronome. Okay. I'm gonna
There's
write
a free version, which is the one I use, and then there's a like mega version, which a couple of my students have bought, and that just gets wild. It's amazing. So, Karen, did you have something?
Oh, I just put Ingenious Music in just so it was in the chat.
Okay.
It's a super app that has really worked well for my younger players.
Absolutely. So in our last, we have about.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go for it, Karen.
A lot of people use smart music as it's a good thing to add on if the kids can know how to use it. It's really tough for the kids at first, but once they get it, their rhythm improves. They can read with the music, and there's some really great helpful things for younger players in there. And you can hear your accompaniment if you're working on a solo. Sure.
Yes, I know the solos have changed in the sort of direction of that. Has the application has changed a little bit in the past since from what it used to be in the past, but it is really great for younger students. Mm-hmm. So in our remaining sort of 4 or 5 minutes we have here, are there any other resources or anything else that you all really want to make sure people know about, the people who are here listening and watching hear about, that you have had really great success with regard to your students and 21st century digital resources? Do you have something, Shannon?
I put a couple in the chat, especially because I think it was Emily mentioned that she is a 10th grader and she's having trouble finding certain resources. And Claire Grelier, who is in foreplay clarinet, which is where most people know her, but she has on her YouTube page, she has done a video for every Rose etude and done a little example and teaching how to teach it, teaching it how to play it, which is really helpful for students, especially high schoolers use those for honor band auditions a lot. And then the other one I put in the chat is Zachary Dirich, which his name is a really weird spelling, so that's why I put the link in the chat. But he's a fantastic clarinetist, and on his page he has warm-ups, 4 or 5 pages of warm-ups from tonguing to long tones, and they're all really great for any level because you can adapt it. And he has them in PDF, so you can just download. So that's one that I've used with my students and myself a million times.
For sure. Karen, did you have something?
I think I must really look obvious. I think with my students, often I really practice things with them when I ask them to do them. I absolutely make sure I go through it slowly with them. I make sure I teach them how to do the apps or whatever I'm asking them to do. And I think that's probably really important to know that as any kind of educator or musician.
For sure. Great. Does anyone have any additional questions from the chat that they would like to ask before we kind of close things down here? I think we've had a really great discussion about all sorts of, digital resources that we can use, and not just what is already out there, but the sorts of things that we want to do and sort of putting that out there so we can start working on that as an organization. But so anyone listening maybe can start thinking about, more deeply about the resources that they use and why. Because I think that that's really important, is choosing quality resources as a teacher for your students, of course, which we all do, but also for any students listening, making sure that you know the source of the materials that you are looking at, because anyone can put anything up on the internet. We all know that as adults and everything, but anyone can put anything up on the internet, and just because they put it there doesn't mean that it's necessarily reputable material. So that's something for any of the students listening. Emily, thank you so much for being here. Anyone listening that you want to be aware of.
I think the big thing now is there's a ton of colleges doing these free high school come in for free. We're gonna do a all-state etude lesson. I had a couple of students do it, and there's not a lot of people doing it. They said, "Oh, I was one of 3." So you had an hour lesson with 3 other people for free. You basically.
That's a great point.
For free. So take advantage of the local colleges if they're having an online thing now. If you're doing music ed in the future or music performance, maybe you can nudge them, be like, "Hey, can I get some scholarship money?" Or since you already kind of know them a tiny bit, you can edge in the door.
Absolutely. That's a super great point, Jonathan, is all because, I mean, the silver lining of so many things being virtual currently and, for the last many months is that we all have access to a lot more things that are either very low cost or no cost. So that's super important. And in the chat, we see LCA also has a give a lesson, take a lesson program. So if that's something you aren't familiar with as a student or as a teacher, it's something you might want to look up, either to donate a lesson and to see if you can get a lesson from somebody new, or if you're not, even if you've never had a lesson before, to see what that's like. And Emily's telling us the University of Memphis and UTM do a different clarinet day. And we know there's a number of universities that do clarinet days and even low cost, no cost master classes that are weekly. So if you can keep your eyes open for that, and the more clarinet organizations you can be aware of. The very last thing I want to talk about before we close out is many of you are familiar with the NICE Clarinet group online. And of course, it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily endorse any particular group, but they have a lot of really great postings there of what's happening. So if you want a place to see where these sorts of events are happening, that's a really great place to stay updated on that material. And we're all seeing the ICA has a brand new event calendar. Look at this website, is just killing. I can't wait to take a deeper look into it. It's just going to be, it's such a gorgeous website already, just the very look of it. So I'm really excited. There are all these incredible resources. Yes, share your events on the ICA website calendar, 100% great. So we're going to be creating our own resource even better. Let's do that. So most colleges also offer videos from college faculty. Absolutely, for sure. Does anyone have any parting thoughts before we close out for the afternoon? All right, if we're all done, I want to thank all of you so much for being here. It was so incredible. Special thanks to Jessica Harry for arranging this incredible event and for taking care of everything, as always, and to Diane Barger and the entire board and everyone, and for all of you for being here. So thank you so much and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
I just want to tell you we have 2 more sessions today. They are going to be premieres on YouTube, so be sure to check out the calendar with all of the events scheduled. And if you have any questions, of course, you can email me at edo@clarinet.org, or you can give me a call on the ICA hotline if you have trouble accessing events. I've been answering lots of phone calls today because the new website is a bit overwhelming. So thank you for being here. Thank you so much to the youth committee for kickstarting lots of really great things for the organization, as are all of our committees. And I hope that I will see you in the chat on some of the new videos that are coming out in the next. Let's grab a snack and use the bathroom and get some hydration going. And then at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, there will be our next event. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.